Hello, you're watching Scotland at 7. I'm Hugh Stewart, and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland on the 18th of November. Tonight's news shortly, but first I'm going to begin with the coronavirus update. As of 2 p.m. today, a total of 3,599,505 people in Scotland have been tested through the NHS Scotland labs and the UK Government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. Of these, 2,903,628 have been confirmed negative, and 695,877 have tested positive. There are 3,235 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed by a test, although not everyone with the virus will display symptoms and not all of those with symptoms will be tested. Unfortunately, there are 29 new reported deaths today of people who had tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 9,448. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of people who have tested positive, 786 were in hospital last night, and 63 of those were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. today, 4,334,346 people had received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 3,933,493 have received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures show 143,559 patients who had tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 119 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just hospitals. Our first story tonight is about the HS2 routes cut back. This is a high-speed train network that was proposed a long time ago to cover the UK. We now learn that the eastern leg of the high-speed 2 train to Leeds has been scrapped, and the full high-speed east-west line linking Manchester to Leeds will not be built. The UK government has confirmed, as it said, faster train journeys will be delivered earlier and cheaper under a £96 billion rail plan. The high-speed rail network will go ahead to Manchester, but will be curtailed at an existing East Midlands station rather than run from Birmingham to Leeds, while the Trans-Pennine route will be improved mainly through upgrades rather than a new line. The UK Transport Secretary Grant Shapps told the Commons the changes and investment would bring better rail connections for passengers years earlier in a network that would work for every community. He said, the Oakervee review of HS2 had shown a rethink was needed, and a subsequent National Infrastructure Commission report meant that, as it said, a flexible approach and strengthening regional rail would be most economically beneficial. An additional £54,000 will be spent on upgrades and new lines, beyond the £42 billion already committed to build the first phase of HS2 from London to Birmingham and Crewe. Grant Shapps said today, the integrated rail plan published on Thursday today was, he said, ambitious and unparalleled, and would speed up intercity connections as well as improving local services. Trains from Manchester to Leeds will eventually take 33 minutes instead of 55, while Birmingham to Nottingham journey times will be cut from more than an hour to 26 minutes, according to the Department of Transport. The plan would include a new section of high-speed line from Warrington to Manchester and the western fringes of Yorkshire. Grant Shapps said, high-speed trains will run into the centre of Nottingham and Derby on the eastern leg using a fully electrified Midland Main Line, an upgrade scheme that was previously scrapped by the government in 2017. The move was met with anger and disappointment in the north of England and Midlands, with Labour describing the plan as crumbs off the table after promises of a fully joined up high-speed network. Responding in the Commons today, Shadow Transport Secretary Jim McMahon said, "The government had completely sold out the North. We know exactly what Northern Powerhouse Rail means. They had re-promised and recommitted 60 times. That opportunity looks set to be lost." The HS2 line from London to Birmingham and Manchester will still go ahead. Plans for the HS2 station in Manchester may be revised to expand the surface station rather than build underground, potentially saving billions in construction costs. Rail experts said going with upgrades instead of new lines risks decades of disruption to services. The engineer and writer Gareth Dennis said it was impossible to deliver both more capacity and faster journeys without segregating the high-speed trains. Our next story: businesses say tackling Brexit-related skill shortages is a top priority. More than 70% of businesses are worried about the skills shortages as a result of the disastrous UK government Brexit, a new study has found. The study by Aviva found that firms thought tackling the lack of workers was a top priority and said there was an urgent need to solve the problem. It comes as concerns are being raised that due to a lack of HGV drivers and other workers in the food processing sector, some goods may not be available for Christmas. Commenting, SNP's member of the Scottish Parliament, Jim Fairley, said, "The Tories are supposed to be the party of business, but once again, they are all talk as they throw business well and truly under the Brexit bus." He went on, "For years, the Tories have created a hostile environment for European workers, which has caused thousands to leave the country, leaving some businesses short and fearing they cannot turn around their products in time for Christmas." Mr. Fairley continued, "Brexit has been devastating for businesses across Scotland and has put our food, hospitality and farming industries at risk due to the Tories and their disastrous Brexit. Businesses are recognising that sorting out the issues caused by leaving the EU must be sorted out as a matter of priority." And on to the story about the Prevent anti-terrorism campaign. More Prevent referrals linked to far-right extremism than Islamist. The number of referrals to the UK government's Prevent counter-terrorism programme relating to far-right extremism has exceeded those for Islamist radicalisation for the first time. There were 1,229 referrals owing to concerns related to extreme right-wing radicalisation in the year ending March 31st, and 1,064 because of suspected Islamist radicalisation. This is according to figures published today. The total number of referrals was down 22% on the previous 12 months to 4,915 referrals, a fall the Home Office suggested was a result of school and university closures during the COVID pandemic. The Prevent programme has been dogged by claims of being a cover to spy on Muslim communities, but police concerns about far-right activity has been rising in recent years, leading them to make a higher proportion of referrals. Accepted referrals related to far-right extremism from early intervention programmes to the Channel, which provides more intensive support, had already outstripped those for Islamist radicalisation in recent years. Last year, the Home Office banned the neo-Nazi group Sonnenkrieg Division, the SKD, members of which had been jailed for serious offences, making membership of the group illegal and punishable by up to 10 years in prison. It also recognised the extreme right-wing group, the System Resistance Network, as an alias for the already prescribed national action. The highest proportion of referrals to Prevent last year, that is 51%, was for individuals with a mixed, unstable or unclear ideology, followed by those radicalised to right-wing groups, causes which is 25%, and finally Islamist referrals at 22%. In line with the overall reduction in referrals, there were drops in all three categories, with the biggest percentage fall in Islamist referrals. The number of police referrals to Prevent increased by 31% compared with 2019-20. However, those made by the education sector fell by the same percentage, to the lowest proportion from schools and universities since comparable figures have been available. The Home Office said it was likely due to the closure of schools and universities as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Excuse me. Yeah, we hear today that Albania angrily denied that it could process asylum seekers for the UK. Albania has strenuously denied it's willing to process people crossing the Channel to Britain after the UK Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab confirmed that the government is exploring ways of processing asylum seekers abroad. Albania's Foreign Minister Alta Yacha said, and its ambassador to the UK, Kyriako Kirchos, dismissed as fake news a report in the Times suggesting that Albania would be willing to host people arriving in the UK from France in small boats. Mr. Raab appeared to give credence to the report by telling Times Radio, "We are looking at international partnerships that can take the processing out of the UK in order to try and reduce the pull factor, which means people think they can successfully take advantage of these routes." On Sky News later, when Mr. Raab was asked if people seeking asylum in the UK would be flown to Albania, he said, "Well, that's one country, but we are willing to look with partners at whether it's possible to do this international processing." But Tirana reacted angrily to the report. Yacha tweeted an image on the front page of the Times and said, "Same old fake news, this time in the front page of a respected paper as the Times. And by the way, I'm not a he, but a she, who has always admired the quality of the British media. Sad." Kirchhoff said he was furious about the report because on Wednesday he had told the Times at least 10 times that Albania will never ever agree to this kind of approach regarding immigrants coming from France. Processing asylum seekers abroad was first started in Australia to Papua New Guinea and now to the Pacific island of Nauru. Our next story, Greece adjourns the trial of aid workers involved in refugee rescues. The trial of 24 aid workers involved in refugee rescues began on the Greek island of Lesbos today and was immediately adjourned amid calls from rights groups that the authorities should drop the absurd charges of spying and disclosure of state secrets. The aid workers, some of them foreigners and including a Syrian refugee, were affiliated with the Emergency Response Centre International, the ERCI, a non-profit search and rescue group operating on Lesbos between 2016 and 2018. The island was then the front line of Europe's refugee crisis, with scores of asylum seekers arriving daily on its shores. The defendants, who face up to 8 years in prison, deny the charges against them. They also face separate felony charges, still being investigated, of people smuggling, belonging to a criminal group, and money laundering, which can carry prison sentences of up to 25 years. Sean Binder, a rescue diver who grew up in Ireland, said he feels angry that the legal requirement to try and help people in distress out at sea is being criminalised right now. "I am angry because there is not a shred of evidence against us," he said. Binder was arrested in 2018 and spent 107 days in pre-trial detention. As well as Binder, police arrested Sarah Mardini, a Syrian swimmer who took an overcrowded dinghy to Greece with her sister Yusra in 2015 and saved the other 19 passengers by pulling their sinking boat to shore for 4 hours. Mardini, who was held in Athens' maximum security prison, was granted asylum in Germany. She could not attend the trial because she is barred from entering Greece, something her lawyer, Paris Pitsikos, called a paradox. A European Parliament report in June called the trial the largest case of criminalisation of solidarity in Europe. Rights groups, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, say the trial is intended to intimidate aid workers, calling the charges farcical and politically motivated. Human Rights Watch said the aid workers are charged with espionage based on a police report that they monitored Greek Coast Guard and Frontex radio channels and vessels. However, the police report acknowledged that radio channels are not encrypted and so can be listened to by anyone. And now we move on to the story that the Scottish Government will have a new Permanent Secretary. John Paul Marks has been appointed Permanent Secretary to the Scottish Government and will take up his post on the 5th of January 2022. Mr Marks joins the Scottish Government from the Department of Work and Pensions, the DWP, where he was Director General for Work and Health Services. This appointment has been made by the UK Cabinet Secretary Simon Case, with the agreement of the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. Mr Marks will succeed Leslie Evans, who is leaving the civil service as planned upon the completion of her almost 7-year term. As Chief Official Policy Advisor, the Permanent Secretary works closely with the First Minister across the full range of responsibilities, including major strategic and policy issues, and is Secretary to the Scottish Cabinet. Our next story, the age of criminal responsibility under Scots law. The age of criminal responsibility in Scotland will increase from 8 to 12 years next month. The Age of Criminal Responsibility Scotland Act 2019 was passed unanimously in May and received a royal assent in June of that year. The Act raises the age of criminal responsibility in Scotland from the age of 8 to the age of 12. Additionally, it provides certain safeguards to ensure that harmful behaviour by children under 12 can be responded to in an appropriate and meaningful way which will not criminalise children. Commenting, the Children's Minister Claire Hockey said, "This groundbreaking law aims to protect children from the harmful effects of early criminalisation. It means primary school-aged children will no longer be stigmatised from being labelled as offenders at such an early age, which will improve their life chances and well-being. Evidence shows that many children and young people who display harmful behaviours are highly vulnerable and have experienced trauma and adversity. They may have been victims of crime in their own lives. Understanding this and responding with compassion and willingness to work with children will ensure that fewer enter the criminal justice system as they grow up." And Ms Hockey went on to say the Act has safeguards to ensure that serious harmful behaviour will be investigated appropriately and that victims will continue to get support they need and to have their voices heard. The legislation means that Scotland will have the highest age of criminal responsibility in the UK, and we are proud to be leading the way in this progressive approach. And now a new institute has been launched to uncover the prevalence of child sexual abuse. The Human Dignity Foundation, a private funder focused on children's rights, is establishing an independent global data institute for child safety at the University of Edinburgh. The institute will gather the most current, reliable and evidence-based data on child sexual exploitation and abuse. It will use insights from the data to inform policy and drive sustainable and coordinated action to support vulnerable children across the world. The Institute will be led by Paul Stanfield, Executive Director-elect. His extensive international career as a senior law enforcement officer includes serving at Interpol and at the UK National Crime Agency. Mr Stanfield has long championed the use of data to gain a better understanding of the abuse and exploitation of children. His priority is to use better data to drive activity and secure resources to protect those vulnerable children globally. Child sexual exploitation and abuse is growing at an alarming rate, experts say. The action needed to end it is hampered by a lack of reliable global prevalence data. The data as exists currently is of mixed quality and not comparable or standardised between countries. The Institute will improve and standardise the collection and prevalence data by developing best-in-class methods. Experts from the Institute will work closely with colleagues at the Moore Centre for the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. The data will be user-friendly and accessible to suitably accredited users who need it, such as governments, civil society and other partners. The ethical use of the data will be paramount for the Institute. A global index and dashboard will be developed to help policymakers, law enforcement and practitioners. The perspectives of children and survivors of sexual exploitation and abuse will contribute to the data design, analysis and interpretation and indeed the reporting of the findings. And the Institute will be supported by the University of Edinburgh's scientific expertise, including the End Violence Lab, the Murray House School of Education, the Edinburgh Futures Institute, and Data-Driven Innovation Programme and the Global Health Academy. Our next story, an expert group to advise on the ending of conversion therapy. An expert group will be established to advise the Scottish Government on the banning of conversion practices, which aims to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity. The group will include people with personal experience of conversion practices, as well as representatives from the LGBTI organisations, faith and belief communities, mental health professionals and academics. The Scottish Government has committed to introducing legislation to end conversion practices as comprehensively as possible with devolved powers by the end of 2023. It is anticipated the expert advisory group will begin its work early next year, and this alongside recommendations from the Equalities, Human Rights and Civil Justice Committee and other evidence and research will inform the Scottish Government's approach. So that's it for tonight. So thank you for watching Scotland at 7 again, and I'll be back tomorrow. But first, can I remind you that this station only works because of your subscriptions, so please have a look at the link below. And as I've said before, if you are one of our regular subscribers and viewers, well, it's great to have you with us, so thanks a lot. But why don't you help us out by spreading the word? Make sure that everyone you know in your social media is aware that we're putting out Scotland at 7 and also the full Scottish on Sundays. We have an exciting plan for new programmes which we want to put out, and as soon as we get more cash in, we'll do that. This week we have already recorded a lot of new a number of new subscribers, but we could do more. Remember, every extra subscriber contributes to our goal of widening out the number and the range of programmes we can make, and also, most importantly, being able to give real jobs to young graduates in the journalistic professions. We would love to be able to take on qualified young people and pay them the minimum wage, but we need more subscribers to do that. So as I've promised before, every pound that comes in will go to making more programmes. And I should underline that our aim on Broadcasting Scotland is to pay the living wage more than the minimum wage. So we will in fact be offering a real minimum wage as soon as we have enough subscribers to do that. A real living wage is our aim. So give us a hand, please, and don't forget to pass us on to your own friends. And if you're subscribing, great, but please ask some more people to help out. So that's it for tonight. And so thank you to Maggie for last night's show. And I'll be back tomorrow. So see you later. Thank you.
What distinguishes Broadcasting Scotland from a website or blog, apart from our brilliant programmes?
Hi there, I'm Gordon Ross.
Are the costs we face to enable us to produce those programmes. These costs are significant and ongoing. However, our facilities are able to do so much more if only we had the staff. In the last year, some of our supporters have cancelled their subscriptions. In one way, we would prefer it if it was because they didn't like us, rather than it being because of the financial pressures which we are all under because of COVID. The really positive outcome of our fundraiser is that at a time of economic challenge in Scotland, we will use your donations to create jobs and in a small way contribute to improving the Scottish economy. If you want us to be Scotland's independent broadcaster, able to provide an alternative mainstream television platform, then please support us.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
Just imagine what we could do if we had even 1% of the BBC Scotland channel's budget. Imagine. And then please consider turning your imagination into reality. Please support us if you can afford it.